I suppose my key message in all of this is, if you're dissatisfied with the way that public management works, if you're a public manager or a leader and you feel it doesn't work how we're doing it right now, you have a choice. You can do public management differently. In some respects, the worst aspect of new public management is that it's relentlessly dehumanizing, in that it strips away the complex reality of people's lives and essentially pretends that what is measurable about a person is the same as what's important about them. And it is this kind of process of relentless dehumanization that is at the heart of the problems of new public management. We know this stuff doesn't work. So it is incumbent on all those who are interested in change to change the public management paradigm, because it constrains so much of what is possible in public service. As an approach to public management, it talks about three key changes in public management. Firstly, it talks about a change in understanding service purpose. So it says the moral purpose of public service is to meet human strengths and needs. And if it's not doing that, it's not doing its job. Secondly, it talks about a change in management focus, in that the primary task of public managers under a human learning systems approach is creating the conditions for learning and adaptation. So under an HLS approach, if a public manager isn't creating the conditions for learning, they're not doing their job. And finally, it talks about a change in leadership focus, because human learning systems recognizes that the outcomes that we care about are the products of whole systems working together, not individual services or programs or projects. And so to create to create good outcomes, we need to nurture the healthy systems from which those emerge. And that requires purposeful work that we call system stewardship. So it's saying that human beings are intrinsically part of multiple webs of relationships. And so to understand and respond to human strength and need is to see people as at the center of their own complex systems. Learning is how public service improves. So learning is the meta strategy for public service organizations. So creating learning environments is the primary job of public managers. So we describe this as optimizing for learning rather than control in public management. And crucial to this is that learning becomes everyone's job every day. So everyone is experimenting with what the right thing to do is every day. Every encounter is a learning opportunity. And so one of the case studies is the Moray Wellbeing Hub in Scotland, and they will say learning and experimentation is a core feature of everyone's work. And they come together to do reflective practice on a regular basis so that people can learn together effectively. As a public service leader, you're accountable for your choice of how to manage. And others are accountable for their choices too. And so you can make that accountability work for you by asking people to account for why they choose to manage in one way or choose to manage in another.
We have moved into the phase in the Finnish education system where we kind of saw that it's not kind of enough that we try to, from top down, to kind of do the development work and kind of give grants and fees and kind of regulatory measures and information steering, that we have to be able to increase the kind of adaptability capacity of the schools, and not only the schools, but actually from the viewpoint of the learner, the child, and kind of then involving also the kind of whole kind of growth environment of the child. And that is something that we need a new approach. And we kind of didn't have the view that what it might be. So we kind of thought that we'll create an experiment of an experiment in a way, that kind of create an organizational structure that is in itself an experiment. We have from the very beginning started with the idea that let's forget scaling, because I think there are actually many reasons why it fails. One thing being that as we're talking about not kind of solutions that come from the outside, but we're talking about solutions that are connected to the people and their relationships with each other. And you can't kind of scale, you can't move that from one place to another, because it's bound to the people. It's their solution. And it's unique for that reason, because we as humans are unique, and the context is always unique. And so it's kind of their problem, and for that reason, it's also their unique way of dealing with it. When we're talking about a kind of systems level, is the question that how we can get the national level and the local level more close to each other to kind of talk the same language and have the kind of intimacy that could make the trust to be kind of growing in that system. And it's not that, how would I say, that we have known the right answer on the national level, and then we, as the project is done, then we say that checked, we've done our part. That's not the aim. The aim is to increase the capacity, the resilience on the local level, and that's a kind of a quality and competence that remains there, and that's the final aim.
Nice. So, if I'm hearing you correctly, kind of, you're saying that evaluation needs to serve the purpose of local learning rather than to checking up from the national scale about whether you did the things you said you were going to do.
Exactly, and that's it doesn't kind of sound as a kind of a big change, but it's kind of revolutionary if you compare it to the traditional way of doing things. What does it mean that you have autonomy? Does autonomy mean that you can do whatever you like and you don't have to care about anybody else? And that's something that we have been trying to communicate a lot, that when you have autonomy, it actually means that you are very dependent on what others in the system with autonomy are doing. That because it's a system with autonomous actors, when one thinks something, it affects the others. So there is this kind of dependency there. Actually, if you would be an actor who cannot decide on any issues, then you are entirely undependent on anybody else. Because then you do just what you're asked to do. Mm-hmm. And that's it. There is nobody else there. But once you are, you have a lot of autonomy, then it's an other issue that then you have to connect to the others and do decisions that take into considerations the others' viewpoints also. And then it's important that those different autonomous actors also come together to have that dialogue, that are we going to the right direction? And that's kind of important. It's not that you have kind of numbers that you can look at and say that now this is the target that we were having, but to kind of, cause you cannot kind of have that kind of targets when the world is changing around you. It's kind of evolving process. But then it's the question that, do you see that you're together with the other actors, you're going to the same direction, and that seems to be the right direction? Sometimes the issue is how we see time used in the process. And quite often the criticism I hear towards this kind of an approach we just talked about is that the decisions and the learning, they take so much time. And they do take time. And you have to reserve that time. But on the other hand, when I'm looking at situation where the kind of traditional top-down decisions are made, which too often fail, and when you kind of have those failing moments, many one after another, that definitely takes time. And it also ruins the kind of trust and hope and kind of legitimacy of the decision making as a whole.